sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. This is Andrew David. This is Blake Mewar's partner program, talking today about ADHD in adults. So we talked a little bit about this yesterday. I want to talk to you a little bit about this today. We want to look at what ADHD is as far as adults are concerned, how it plays into this world of entrepreneurship. I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of the superpowers, the obstacles, the things to avoid, how to, different forms of treatment. Again, I'm not diving into causes of, right? We could spend hours and hours and hours talking about all of the different problems with society as a whole, from a nutritional to an educational to a parental standpoint, why so many more kids now are diagnosed with ADHD than ever before. But, I'm not diving into that. What I want to do is help you guys recognize what's there for you. Now, some of you will identify really well with this, and others will look at it and go, well, that's not me, but maybe it is the spouse or a friend or a brother or sister, and might help you understand a little bit more where that comes from. Some of you guys may have experienced some of this growing up. You never were able to sit still in class, right? You struggled with that. You struggled listening to the teacher. Maybe it was elementary school. Maybe it was in high school, right? So there's a few things we're going to talk about that can help you kind of pinpoint if this is you. Yesterday, I challenged you. I said, hey, go out and find some free ADHD tests online. See if any of it looks like you. Did anybody get a chance to do that? Anybody? No? Let me show you guys something here. I'm going to show you mine. So this was one that I took. I had taken it before. I went in and did it again. This is my result. Strong indication of ADD, ADHD. This is another one. My total score was 55 out of 58, above 40. They say that it's likely. I was at 55 out of 58. And then where's this other one? My score was 23 out of 24. The higher the point total, the greater the likelihood. What got me laughing actually at one point as I was going through it, there, it's asking these questions, and it's, often, very often, sometimes never, that kind of thing. So there was one of the questions, do you tend to answer questions? And I just jumped down and I wrote very often. And I kind of stopped and I went, the question was, do you answer questions before the question's done being asked? And I happened to jump. Hey, if anything's going to scream at you that you've got a little bit of it, it's that right there. So what is the criteria? Has it changed over time? These are, obviously, they're not full diagnosis. It's just, hey, here's some, you exhibit some likelihood areas, right? I could go in and do the whole thing. I had my therapist a few years ago who, it was one of the things, adult ADHD was one of the things that he just happened to specialize in. He told me after the fact, said, hey, I think this kind of fits you. So, that's kind of where it started to wake up for me. Now, what I want to do is I want to share some of this stuff. Rick, that's fine. Yeah, there will be a recording for Friday, guys. So as we look at this here, right? Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Neurodevelopmental disorder impacts the prefrontal cortex. It's the area responsible for executive functions, emotional regulation, impulse control, right? So I already have these slides inside the 60-day challenge group, Google Drive. So all of you guys that have it, the slides are already in there. Okay, most children with ADHD become adults with ADHD because though the symptoms may shift and change, they rarely go away altogether. So you may learn how to deal with some things. They may shift a little bit from one to another because you're forced to focus on them, right? And part of this is how adults throughout the last number of decades, because I'm not as concerned with how teachers deal with it now. Now, if you've got kids that are in that situation, then yes, you should pay a little bit more attention. What I'm looking at is how teachers dealt with it when we were kids. You were the unruly kid. You were the one that wasn't paying attention. Forrest, oh, there you go. Yeah. Hey, get up off your butt. Your wife's saying that. So It was, you're not paying, put that book away, put your paper away. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? We didn't have phones that we were sitting in class playing with phones. But I don't know about you guys. I would sit in the back of, one of my math classes and I would read a book, or I would look through comic books, or I would just sit and draw because I was bored with what was going on up there. Right. I was the kid where, always kind of playing devil's advocate. Well, what about this? And asking questions. And I was genuinely curious, but part of it sometimes, how many of you would ask the questions just to prolong the lecture so that you wouldn't have to get into certain work while you were sitting in class, right? How many of you were great at coming in, taking a test, but you sucked at getting the homework, the assignment done? Because that meant I had to sit down and focus and do things, right? I can consume the information and get it into my head and then go in and take a test without any worries at all. But man, you want me to sit down and create a report on this? Come on. So how did the teachers handle it then? And then how did we learn to cope as adults? And what did we learn to do? So here we go. I just read this morning that a connection with fluoridated water and ADHD. Maybe, could be. There's all sorts of different things. So next, so this isn't the most clear chart. This is boys and girls diagnosed. Higher amount of boys than girls. Not totally sure why. So here's a few myths about ADHD. One, that it isn't real. Next, children eventually outgrow, because they don't. It doesn't only affect boys, although it seems to have a higher tendency to, boys have a larger statistic probability. It's not the result of bad parenting, has nothing to do with that, though it can be genetic. They say that there is a correlation on a genetic standpoint where there's issues with dopamine. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Dopamine is what is released into our bodies as part of that pleasure indicator, right? Makes us feel good about stuff. People with ADHD, that dopamine trigger is inhibited in some ways. And so we may not experience that same excitement about certain things. And so we go out in an effort to create the excitement, right? So that's where some of that can happen. So people that take ADHD meds are more likely to abuse other substances. No correlation there. People with ADHD never amount to anything. All right. So again, those are all myths. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. Kids diagnosed number, so the 6.1% here, as opposed to, we were talking about yesterday, between 9 and 15%. So this is actually the percentage that are being treated with medication, which is kind of alarming, because you have between 9 and 15% that have it, or 9 and 15 million, whatever that number was. But point is not nearly enough of the ones that are diagnosed are actually getting treated. Okay. And yeah, 42% increase over the past 8 years. So common symptoms of adult ADHD. If you experience some of these, this means that there may be a likelihood of, not necessarily, a diagnosis. I am not a clinical psychologist. I am not diagnosing things. We're just bringing awareness to, et cetera, et cetera. Insert necessary. I can't even think today. My ADHD is kicking in. You know what I'm talking about. Disclaimer. That's the word. So problems focusing on a task. Disorganization, problem prioritizing. Okay, when you come upon a difficult thing, you shift gears, right? You get anxious. It's the new and exciting thing. Man, I want to get this happening, right? Excessive activity or restlessness. Your time management sucks. Impulsivity, including speaking out of turn or acting out. Problems following through. Easily angered or annoyed. Now, I'm not easily angered or annoyed. That doesn't. Well, I would say I'm not easily angered. I think I can get annoyed pretty quickly with certain things. But part of that's simply because I'm, moving. And if someone's not trying to keep up, then it's frustrating for me personally. So here's some common symptoms. When a woman experiences ADHD, it's unfortunate, but society oftentimes will describe it in these ways. It's not correct. It's just what happens. So a lot of times if it's a woman, the behavior described as flighty or aloof or having her head in the clouds, that may be ADHD symptoms. Okay, but the way that it's described oftentimes is now blaming the woman. That's not correct. So distraction is more likely to be misinterpreted as representative of her intelligence. And it's unfortunate. We're just talking about how things are, guys. I know it's not right. It sucks. You women have it hard enough, but that's just part of how things go. And then you have silent symptoms. They don't draw a lot of attention, but they can also create barriers, right? Struggling through a to-do list, finishing a project. You add on top of that being a woman in the workplace, and then on top of that being a mother or a single mother, and now there's extra issues. Maybe indicators of ADHD, right? So great study done by a guy named John Torrance. He is an entrepreneur, has a large company, is connected to a large organization of entrepreneurs. He's along with being an entrepreneur, he's also a professor. I want to say at Syracuse University. So, and next to him is another professor who studies entrepreneurs. So they put together a survey. They surveyed business owners. They went after, larger businesses. They sent out the survey. They got 400 responses from this survey. 100 of them didn't finish the survey properly enough to even use. Just to give you an idea, they were trying to find an idea about the CEOs, the people and the owners of these companies. Do they exhibit symptoms in congruency with ADHD? A quarter of them didn't even finish the survey properly because they were too distracted with stuff. Now, of those that responded, the average revenue was 24 million and 100 employees. So large businesses, right? Now, of that sample, 62% showed signs of ADHD. 62%. Now, what's the average adult percentage? What did we say? 4 to 5% yesterday? 4 to 5% of the average adult population shows signs of ADHD. Meanwhile, these highly effective entrepreneurs, 62% showed signs. Now, the entrepreneurial orientation of the firm, the way the business acts, higher level of innovation, also higher level of risk taking and proactivity, meaning they act and do things not simply following the market, but they move quicker than some companies. Okay. When they're talking about the entrepreneurial orientation here, what they mean is, it's not run, they're mobile in how they behave. This didn't work. We're trying something else. We're going to try this, even though, not everybody else in the market's doing that. We don't know how it's going to happen. It's okay. We're going to jump and we'll build the parachute on the way down, right? You ever heard that phrase? That's kind of what they're talking about here. Okay. So business showed higher signs of innovation, risk-taking, proactivity, and orientation. Next, this impulsivity. These are different types of reactions that are in connection with ADHD. So there's a sense of urgency, lack of premeditation, lack of perseverance, sensation seeking, and impulsivity. Now, you can see how some of these things would make it difficult, but if you look at it with a glass half full mentality, we can also see how some of this can work. How many of you guys have worked in a business where there was no sense of urgency? Something was wrong and people just took forever to make it happen. Just take forever. Good Lord, let's make it work, right? Why are we in another meeting about the meeting that we had concerning the meeting that we're going to have in 3 months, right? I've been in those, nothing changes. Lack of premeditation means they're willing to jump, right? And then if something doesn't work, hey, I'm not going to go down with the ship. We're going to find a new solution. Okay, so again, that's those signs. Now, here's something to kind of think about. People with ADHD, and they spoke specifically with these owners here and these CEOs. Of those owners that were exhibiting these things, they had a higher rate of dyslexia, depression. The substance abuse was about equal, but anxiety as well. a lot of times these things go hand in hand. Depression and anxiety can come about because you're jumping from one to another. Projects aren't getting completed. People start to communicate with you and say, look, you never get anything done. This doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. The expectations that we place on ourselves because we've not seen things through can increase, which will then affect how we feel. Just pay attention to all of these things. So cycles of ADHD. So one of the things you need to do is overcome the inner cynic. You are not broken. It is not a disability. It is not something you cannot overcome. You can and you should. You just need to keep pushing yourself. Okay. The biggest cynic you're ever going to face in this life, truly, ladies and gentlemen, is you. Somebody's writing on the screen. So, all right, next. You do need to take it seriously. You do need to understand that it is something to work on. Okay. It is something that you need to pay attention to. It doesn't just go away. Recognizing it will allow you to work on it. Okay. Will allow you to help them. Help yourself, sorry. Avid and faithful pursuits. Meaning go after it, keep yourself focused. So I'm going to get back to some of these things. You got to learn how to deal with disappointment. It is just simply part of the task, and you've got to have some grit in your life and occasionally some positive intervention. Now, what I want you to do, guys, is kind of look through some of the rest of this over the day. I put these slides into the Google Drive. Study these a little bit. We're going to talk about them some tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about dopamine. We're going to talk about some of these elements. If this tends to describe you, we're going to talk about we're going to talk about things to avoid. And then I'm also going to talk about 5 steps to train yourself so that you can think better. And actually it's not 5. I think I've got 10 different ways that you can work on how to improve what you're currently dealing with. Okay. Does that make sense with everybody? Take a moment today, just look through it. Maybe look up one of those free tests. Take a look. Maybe it's you, maybe it's not. That's okay. Look up dopamine a little bit. Pay attention to the descriptors that we use when you look at ADHD, even if you don't feel like, hey, that's not me, but yeah, I've got some issues with this. That's not totally me, but those two things kind of do reflect who I am. And what we need to do is figure out how to work on those elements in your life. It's all about self-awareness. It's all about making things happen. Hartley, I just looked up free adult ADHD test. And so there's a bunch of them there. And I just picked like 3 of the first ones. So some of the first ones are going to be ads. And then after that, you just click over. So that's the easiest way to do it. Find a couple of them. So I think they're fun anyway, so go ahead, do those. Take a look at how they describe you and look at it. And even if you're low on that scale, look, there's always something that we can work on. Okay. So pay attention to that. I've got these slides are already inside the Google Drive. Take a look at them. I know some of you are going to get done with this and you're immediately going to jump onto another project, or you've got another meeting that's waiting for you. And then you're going to get going. And then there's 12 other tasks. And then you're going to get to the end of the day and you're going to go, I wonder if I've got some ADHD. Should I pay attention to that? So I'm here to tell you, yeah, you probably do. Okay. Let's focus in and just work on bettering yourselves. That's why this small challenge that we've got this month, 50 push-ups a day, 20,000 steps, going for a walk with the dogs, reading, 20 pages from a book, doing some meditation, whatever it is. Guys, this can help you with so many of these things. Well, Andrew, how does push-ups help me with my ADHD? Because you're forced to, amidst all of the other chaos, find a few minutes, drop down and do something that isn't technically on the schedule, but has to be accomplished every single day. It's a task that hopefully is stretching you to the point where it's not something that you enjoy doing. A lot of times with ADHD, you avoid those difficult tasks. And that's why some of you guys haven't done it, every single day, done this challenge, is because it's a difficult task and we want to avoid that. right? It's an uncomfortable conversation. The only difference is right now, the uncomfortable conversation is with yourself. So take a minute, read through some stuff, prep yourself for tomorrow. Sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it today. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are.